Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I want to talk about Gary Vaynerchuk and his massive NFT project called VeeFriends.
Welcome to VeeFriends.com. VeeFriends is an ambitious NFT project around characters that have traits that I believe in so much that I want people to aspire to.
This is something that is pretty different, and I think a lot of people are missing out on how big this opportunity could really be. So I originally came across this project by doing a video on something called a GiftGoat. A GiftGoat is this weird NFT that you can buy that has this really cool concept that Gary Vaynerchuk made. It's pretty expensive. It started out at 15 ETH, so that would be like $60,000. And then most of them are trading around 5 ETH, which means give or take $20,000, 20,000 and change, depending on where ETH is at for the day. But you pay between $20,000 and $60,000. They're all the same. There's 555 of them.
555 GiftGoats.
Correct.
These are people who are gonna literally put in your address and stuff shows up. Hang out.
And then he gives you a gift every 2 months for 3 years. And so that to me sounded really interesting and really intriguing. And so I started doing a little bit of research on the project and just kind of went down this deep rabbit hole where at first, when I was looking at the project, I was like, this seems silly. I don't really get it.
To be honest, it sounds kind of wacky at first blush, right? Can you start at the beginning and go over it for us, Gary V?
Anytime smart people think something I'm doing is wacky on first blush, I know I'm doing something really important.
There's a bunch of these little characters that don't seem like they're traditionally great art. And as I looked more and more into the project, I began to think this is actually really interesting. And this is kind of very well thought out. So what is VeeFriends? What is the project? How does it work? You have the GiftGoat, which accounts for 555 out of roughly 10,000 pieces of art. But each piece of art is actually tied to the real world. And so the GiftGoats actually are going to be allowing you to have a gift every 2 months. But every one of these pieces also gets you access to Gary Vaynerchuk's big conference, which is called VeeCon.
A multi-day event that is gonna rival some of the greatest conferences in the world around entrepreneurship, marketing, ideas.
So these are the overarching details of how this project works, the size of the project, and what kind of pulleys and triggers go into the project. And at a topical level, it's kind of like, I don't really know what to think of it. And these things seem to be pretty expensive for what they are. But as soon as I started looking closer and closer, I started to realize not just what Gary's background is, where, this is a guy who's been very successful. And not to say that he's successful, thus this will be a success, but more from the standpoint of this isn't somebody who I personally feel like is likely to do a money grab on the initial amount of capital that he's going to raise from the 10,000 VeeFriends. I think it's actually much more likely that he's going to build an enormous amount of equity into this project as time goes by. And thinking about it from a logical business standpoint, if we took a look at this, I think that he's probably going to raise about $80 million in revenue off of his initial 10,000 VeeFriends that he sells. So the simple math is ETH is about $4,000 per Ethereum today. There's 10,000 of these pieces of art that are going to be sold. And I'm going to say the average price is going to be roughly 2 ETH. So that math breaks down to $80 million. So how does this kind of play out in my head? Well, $80 million to me seems like it's about a seed to Series A round level of investment for a high-end entrepreneur who has a background in traditional successes. So if Vaynerchuk was doing his Series A, that feels like it probably hits right on the head. And in a sense, buying these pieces of art is a way to invest in him and the project in the A round, but almost crowdfunding the A round and not doing an equity dilution traditionally. But in some senses, you do have the equity because you have the original pieces of art. And if this project is a success, much like an early investor in any project, you're likely to have an outsized upside. So an asymmetrical bet where you're going to end up making a lot more money than you put in. But like everything else, this is not financial advice. This is just my opinion. And it's risky. Like anything that you would put into this project, you have to be comfortable that you could lose the entire amount that you put into the project. But what really got interesting for me was looking at it from a collector's standpoint. Because when you start to look at this project as a collector, And look, that Gary Vaynerchuk is historically a collector.
Well, I don't think people understand that sports cards are about to become a cultural phenomenon again. And so I'm just putting it on the record in media so I'm historically correct.
So why do you
This has a lot of really great things about this project. So let's take a look at like what checks the boxes of making something a great project that's likely to be very valuable into the future. The first box to check, I already said, I don't think Gary's doing a money grab. It doesn't seem like that's his background. It doesn't seem like that's his ethos. He seems to be a pretty good guy. Obviously could be wrong, but I think that part you can kind of rule out that he's just kind of drop these, take the $80 million and run. And here's the reason why. He's built his entire brand on his reputation. And he's not saying with a caveat, oh, maybe only experienced investors should be buying these, or that I don't really know if you should do it. And he's not pushing it in a way that makes me think that he's giving it with some caution. He's very bullish on it. And that's something new for him. And he knows his audience is a amalgamation of people. And to a lot of people in his audience, like half of an ETH or an ETH is a very large amount of money. And so I think that if he wasn't to execute on this, it would equate to a very large reputational hit for him. And his entire brand is reputation. He runs a consulting practice. He is constantly in the media. He's a face of his business, and he and VaynerMedia are one and the same. So I don't think that would be a risk worth taking, given the amount of money that he has and given the size of his business. So checkbox number one, I don't think that it's very likely to just be a money grab. Now, this is well thought out. This is curated. When you look at a Picasso, when you look at Van Gogh, when you look at a lot of the artists, whether you're going to look at Beeple or CryptoPunks, you're seeing that there's a really big scale of volume of artwork that they put out. So you might be wondering, why is there such a large volume? Well, in a very simple sense, when you take a look at the art world, for the most part, art that has, or artists that have large volumes are more attractive to art curators because there's enough art to justify the squeeze being worth the juice, and a lot of people in the community can have access to it. So if you only had one really great painting, then you might not be able to get that much value because it could only go to one person. It doesn't make a lot of sense for art curators or kind of like market makers in the art world to put a lot of time and effort to promote you if there can only be one piece, because you're going to spend the same amount of time and effort promoting a singular person, whether they have one piece or whether they have 100,000 pieces. So the number that he picked was 10,000 initial pieces of art to start with. When you take a look at it, like you have almost the exact same number of CryptoPunks that you have that he launched. So that's like almost a perfect pairing. And you can look at, again, going back to like Van Gogh, you can look at like Picasso. I think Picasso had 50,000 pieces of art. So this is really thoughtfully in line with what the best artists are doing. Again, doesn't mean it's going to make him the best artist, doesn't mean it's definitely going to be a success, but now you've got two checks. You've got a money grab that's not going to go on, and you've got the fact that he's putting out the right amount of volume that makes it logical. Checkbox number three, it's easy to collect. These things are set up as collector's items, and I think that's the eye for baseball cards as far as where he comes from in his background. You know, at a very young age, he's trading baseball cards.
Like, there's money to be made in sports cards. Now, it's like anything else. It's like real estate. It's like social media. You could get killed.
But these are set up, whether people realize it or not, in curated sets. Like you have the holograms, the lavas, you have the one of ones, you have the ones of 20. And there's ways that you could collect them. Like you could collect a single print. Like let's say you picked up the astronaut, which looks like it's one of the most valuable pieces so far right out of the gates. You could get a one of one in lava, you could get a one of one in diamond. And if you picked up all of the pieces that you could, so that you would have a copy of every one of the astronauts across his board, that's going to be a collection. And any collector knows that a completed collection is going to be worth more than the sum of its parts. And that's actually part of the fun as a collector, to be collecting these things in like a baseball card or Pokemon. So it's set up to do that, and it's set up in a really nice manner in that that is going to drive a lot of positive attention into the future. So that's checkbox number three. It's got kind of this cool game theory to it that allows for people to be collecting and allows for people to easily decipher, here's a completed set, which, you know, I think Magic the Gathering does a really good job with that. There's a few other brands that do a really good job with it, but you can see there's an intentionality and a thoughtfulness that goes with it. Checkbox number four. In order to have a really high-end curation of art, you need to have high-end curators and high-end people backing you. And Gary Vaynerchuk has some of the wealthiest, most successful, most well-known friends in the world. He's got CEOs of major companies that he knows. He has top musicians in the world that are his personal friends.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you balance that?
Well, I think you have to know what you know and also be aware of what you don't know.
He has venture capitalists that are really good buddies with his, and he's just a very successful and very collaborative guy. He has the audience and the masses to promote big, but then he also has the really high-end connections to collectors. Now, all of these things are cool. All of this stuff is good. All of this is really interesting, and you're probably like, so what? Like, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Here's where the linchpin of the entire project comes in. It's the GiftGoat. The GiftGoat is such a powerful marketing tool.
The GiftGoat. 555 people, part of a community that gets surprised and delighted as long as they've got the token. I mean, this is a big one. Once people start understanding the kind of things that are being sent consistently, I think the FOMO and the market gets created.
If I'm Gary Vaynerchuk, I realize immediately that this GiftGoat should be a loss leader. Anyone who buys a GiftGoat, let's say you average the GiftGoat for $30,000, should probably be getting $60,000 to $100,000 minimum in gifts back, because the GiftGoat is a way that you can promote the project and still look good doing it, right? So for a traditional artist, you promote your project, you say, here's my art, and then if you keep promoting it, it ends up looking like you're pushing a little bit too hard or you're shilling your project, and it just feels a little bit disingenuous, because at the end of the day, it's a very self-interested movement, and people don't like self-promotion too much. I mean, a little bit is okay, but for the most part, it comes off as pushy or salesy, and it doesn't look good. And so without the GiftGoat, you might run into that. But the interesting thing is, this is just probably going to be a loss leader, where every 2 months he's going to drop a gift for 3 years. And it's going to be dropped to 555 people. That's the whole dynamic of what the GiftGoat is. And that allows a perpetual marketing machine that can continue forward, where anytime he wants, he could drop a big gift because he has access to capital, whether it's from the sale of the other pieces or something else. And I mean, just imagine if he, and I'm just hypothesizing here, I said this in another video, if he dropped a, Gary V Model V Tesla, which I think that's a little bit silly, but maybe something more realistic might be him to have like a 5 Series BMW, and he's got a lot of great connections. Maybe he connects with BMW, and they're willing to sell him 555 BMWs for half price, and then he covers the rest. Or maybe he doesn't get a discount, he just picks them up and does it as a marketing spend. Every gift that's given is going to be a marketing spend, and every gift that's given is going to be put to 555 people that are then going to subsequently show it off. Now, everyone might not be making a YouTube video, everyone might not be sending a tweet with a picture of their new 5 Series BMW, but I promise you, if you spent $30,000 on a GiftGoat, and then the first thing that showed up was a $50,000 car, you're going to tell every single person you have in your social circle about how great and how smart and how brilliant you were to buy the GiftGoat. And that is going to replicate in a ripple effect that is going to increase the value of the entire brand if it's done really well. And, Gary's a guy that, in my opinion, is pretty long-sighted. Now that you have everything that kind of comes together and you're looking at it, it's a collector's item. You have the right people involved can purchase it. He is a great marketer. He's probably not likely to do a money grab. He's not somebody who seems disingenuous. And you have this crazy GiftGoat where you're just kind of like able to constantly pump for 3 years anything that would be cool. And then the last piece that I think makes this really interesting is that every subsequent piece of art that you sell, that you purchased, Gary's going to get 10% into perpetuity. Now, why would you want that? At first, you're going to be like, that's a tax. I'm going to pay a 10% tax to Gary after I already paid, $30,000 for this. No, well, yes. I mean, it is, but that provides the incentive for him to continue to market and build up the value of the brand. The game theory of everything here, in my opinion, just seems to be lining up that it's a worthwhile project that people should be looking at in the NFT space. And I think a lot of people are missing it. I think a lot of people are focused on the style of drawings and the style of art and saying that it's not traditional art. But my prediction is this is going to be a big investment piece. My prediction is that this is going to go very big into the future. And I'm here putting this on record to say that's my opinion. And, we'll wake up in 2 years, we'll wake up in 5 years and see if I'm right or wrong. And I'm wrong sometimes. So this may not happen, but I think at least at the early stages, it checks all the boxes. As of today, he's already sold over 6,000 pieces of art, and that's about 60% after less than a week in the project. So I think that this is going to be bigger than most people imagine, and I'm excited to see what happens.